All right, let's get right into it. There is a huge battle brewing over the future of artificial intelligence here in the US. But it's not about killer robots or anything like that. It's about who gets to write the rulebook. Is it going to be individual states, or is the federal government going to step in? This is the story of a really high-stakes legal showdown. So on one hand, you got states like Colorado, who are out in front, passing their own big, comprehensive AI law to protect people. And then on the other hand, you have this new federal executive order. It's all part of a bigger push for one single national AI policy, and it's designed specifically to take on those very state laws. Yeah, these two forces are absolutely on a collision course. So the big question is, who gets caught in the crossfire here? Well, it's the AI developers, it's the businesses, really it's anyone trying to build or use these incredible new systems. They're the ones who are now staring down a total patchwork of competing rules and, frankly, a massive amount of confusion. To really get what's going on, we have to start by looking at what the states are actually doing. So let's kick things off with Colorado's new law, which is a real trailblazer, and it zeroes in on a very specific kind of AI. You know, the entire Colorado law really hinges on this one idea, the high-risk AI system. So what is that exactly? Well, it's any AI that's a major factor in making what the law calls a consequential decision. Basically, any decision that could seriously, materially affect someone's life. And we're not talking about abstract ideas here. The law gets super specific about what counts as consequential. We're talking about the big stuff, trying to get a job, being approved for a mortgage, qualifying for an apartment, getting health care, even just getting into school. These are those critical moments that Colorado wants to put guardrails around. And you know what really stands out here is how much this is all about the consumer. If you're going to use one of these high-risk AIs in Colorado, you have to actively reduce discrimination risk. You've got to run yearly impact studies, and this is huge. You have to be totally transparent with people. You have to tell them an AI is involved. You have to explain why it made a bad decision about them, and you've got to give them a path to appeal to an actual human being. Okay, so you have states like Colorado popping up with their own rules. Well, the federal government is not just sitting back and watching. They've launched a counteroffensive. The whole goal is to sweep away this messy state-by-state patchwork and put one single national framework in its place. And they are not being subtle about their strategy. This quote right here from the executive order itself just spells it all out. The Department of Justice is going to sue the states. And their main legal argument, that all these different state laws create an unfair and, they argue, unconstitutional burden on any business that operates across state lines. And this gets us to the core legal theory here, something called the Dormant Commerce Clause. Now, to put it simply, this is a long-standing constitutional idea that basically says states can't make up their own rules that make it way too hard or expensive for companies to do business nationwide. The federal argument is that having 50 different AI rulebooks would just totally cripple American innovation and our ability to compete. And this executive order doesn't just talk about lawsuits. It lays out an entire toolkit. We already mentioned the new litigation task force, but there's also a ton of financial muscle being flexed, threatening to withhold billions in funding from states that don't get in line. And get this one is pretty wild. They're telling the FTC to relabel some state-required efforts to reduce AI bias as a deceptive trade practice. I mean, wow. They're essentially trying to turn a state requirement into a federal violation. Okay, so we've seen the two playbooks, we've seen the strategies. Now let's really put them head-to-head. Where exactly do these two worlds collide? Right, the state approach and the federal approach, they're not just a little different. In some really critical areas, they are fundamentally at odds with each other. And this isn't just about some minor disagreements. It's a direct conflict over core principles, as you're about to see. And this just lays it all out clear as day. I mean, take bias mitigation. Colorado requires companies to try to reduce algorithmic discrimination. The federal order frames that exact same action as potentially deceptive. Or look at documentation. Colorado demands deep transparency. The feds call that an unconstitutional burden. The goals themselves are completely different. Colorado is all about protecting consumers, while the executive order is about promoting a uniform, business-friendly environment to help the U.S. compete globally. So if you're a business or a founder or a developer trying to build something in this environment, what on earth are you supposed to do? This whole conflict has created this thick legal fog, and figuring out how to get through it is the #1 challenge right now. This timeline really puts a fine point on the problem. Just look at these dates.
The federal task force is set to start suing states in January of 2026. Then the list of so-called problematic state laws is going to come out in March. But here's the kicker. Colorado's law doesn't even go into effect until the end of June. The legal war will have already started before the rules are even being enforced. It's kind of wild. Which, of course, leads to the most practical, most urgent million-dollar question for any founder watching this. When that June 30th deadline hits, whose rules do I actually have to follow? The states? The feds?
And here is the absolute key point. An executive order cannot, by itself, overturn an existing state law. It just can't. Only Congress passing a new law or the courts can do that. So until a judge officially strikes it down, a process that could take years, Colorado's law is the law of the land in Colorado. And yes, that means it will be enforceable.
So, given all of this complexity, all this back and forth, what's the real signal here? What's the actual strategic takeaway for businesses that are just trying to plan for the future? The clearest signal is this. Buckle up and prepare for a long period of legal fights and uncertainty. I mean, these cases could easily go all the way to the Supreme Court. So in the meantime, from a pure risk management point of view, the safest thing you can do is comply with the strictest rules you see on the books. And right now, that means complying with the strictest state laws, like the one in Colorado. Because while the federal challenge is the long-term story, not complying with the law that exists today is your biggest immediate risk. And all of this entire showdown, it really brings us to the fundamental question at the very heart of this debate. It is a classic battle, right? The unstoppable drive for innovation versus the critical need for regulation. And in this new age of AI, figuring out who gets to write those rules and what those rules should even say, that might just be one of the most important questions we all face.